Now, the city is fast-tracking replacement work on the Bearspaw feeder main, and it could start as soon as tomorrow. Repair work was originally scheduled for this spring, but has been accelerated after the pipe burst twice in less than the last 2 years. Now, the plan is to build a new steel pipe alongside the existing one and to have it done by next winter. To help break down the new plan for the pipe, we're joined by Kerry Black. She's an associate professor and Canada Research Chair in the Department of Civil Engineering at the University of Calgary. The city wants this project complete by the end of the year, by the end of 26. How ambitious is that, and what do you think of that timeline?
Well, I think, it definitely is ambitious, but reasonable. Reasonably ambitious is what we'll call it. I think, by the end of the year, they're going to prioritize this project throughout, but also build in a bit of buffer time, a little bit of contingency, thinking ahead to, the busiest time of the year for the city of Calgary. Things like the Stampede, our summer months that sometimes feel a bit shorter than we'd like them to feel. I think they want to make sure that they've planned ahead, that this is a reasonable forecast for the construction schedule, but they also want to make sure that there's a buffer in there. So I think that it's achievable, it's reasonable, but it's going to require, significant resources and a pretty concerted effort by the contractors on this one.
What are the challenges and even risks that come with fast tracking a project of this scale?
Well, it's not, something that's brand new. It's not like we don't know how to replace water main or build a new one. So it's not that we're building something we've never built before. The contractors are quite familiar with the project at hand. So I think the risks with respect to construction are low, but I think people need to be anticipating a few different things. So, starting construction in the winter, not everyone's ideal time to build in construction, but you can see because of that, there's some building in that time in the summer where maybe we're not as impacted. I also think looking ahead to potential water restrictions, having to maybe make a few modifications to the way that we're dealing with water over the next year is a small price to pay for what we're going to get at the end. But I don't think there's anything to be worried about or any risks. This is just the city recognizing that this is now a very high priority on their list.
Right. You mentioned winter and the weather. I mean, this matrix of the whatever weather challenges are out there, and then obviously you also flagged Stampede. Like there are times where we want to be cautious around disruptions. Like how do you map the process, manage the project over time when you think about the weather and also significant events in the city?
Yeah, well, there's one thing I've learned since becoming a Calgarian 5 years ago is that the weather chooses what it wants to do. So you make the best of what you can to plan around that. I mean, all of our pipes are below a level where freeze and thaw are an issue. So we're not necessarily working, above ground, and it's not a concern. It's mostly an inconvenience for those working in it. Does it present some challenges? Absolutely. Are the contractors more than ready to be able to deal with that? Absolutely. And you can see that with the contractors that have been brought on hand to deal with the project. With respect to the Stampede, I think this is another example of where the city is trying to make sure that the inconvenience to business and to people is going to be minimized. We try and prioritize construction within the work week and the school week. So before the end of June and, prior to the start of September, just after the start of September are really the ideal times because you don't have as many people out and about. That relationship with the water is a little bit different. I think we'll all remember that last year, the city chose to delay some of the repairs until the start of September, giving people that extra time to enjoy their summer before we had to go back into water restrictions.
Yeah. Okay. I need you to bring some engineering know-how to just like some very layman's considerations here. But, we've obviously been warned that there's no guarantees the old Bearspaw water main won't break again. In the context of this construction, like, are there risks of building a new pipe next to this old end of life one, especially when, we recognize now just how vulnerable it is?
Yeah, well, the wonderful and terrible thing about this work is that, you can plan ahead and be as diligent as possible, but you can't always predict when and where something is going to break. And I think December brought that all to the forefront for us. Putting in a new pipe, the work that they're doing there, could it cause some disruptions to the nearby pipe? Absolutely. But I don't think that that's, any greater of a risk, maybe slightly more than the risk that the pipe has already. Usually where the biggest risk is, and you saw that last week as we slowly brought on the water main line, is recommissioning. So as soon as you bring that water in, you're trying to repressurize the pipe. That's when you can start to put a little bit of pressure on the system. And that's when you're usually the most cautious. But in this case, we're talking about a brand new piece of pipe. At the same time, it can present challenges to other areas of pipe within the system that are also still a priority. So we're only talking about the large water main, but the city in general has concerns around the whole area that it's been looking at. And so they're going to take their time to really make sure that they're doing this in a thoughtful process. That's why, you fast track the construction, but you also take your time when you're commissioning the system in the end.
Yeah. So more work on the pipe is scheduled for the spring, and the pipe will have to be temporarily shut down during that time. Given the vulnerability, given that there will be shutdowns, like what can Calgarians do to be prepared for all this?
Yeah, well, I think this is a great opportunity for Calgarians to look at how prepared they've been over the last two sessions that this happened. So most people have their candles and batteries ready for a power failure somewhere in the house, even if they can't remember where it is. Not a lot of people have their 72-hour water supply. And the last thing you want to be doing if there's an interruption to the water is to have to be running out to the store to get bottled water. So I think for starters, 72-hour water supply is kind of standard. Store that indoors so that it doesn't get frozen outside in your garage. The second piece is really looking at, what worked well for Calgarians when they were trying to reduce their water. Can you, think about how you're using water just a little bit different and start to implement those changes now slowly so that when we do have water restrictions, and this is not just about the pipe, as we go forward and we have less and less water available to us, which is a reality, we're ready to deal with that. The way that we use water right now is not sustainable, and we're wasting a lot of water. And so this is an opportunity for Calgarians to think about what worked well, where can I make a few little tweaks, how can I use water just a little bit more sustainably to make sure that I'm not wasting it. I don't need to turn the tap on when I'm brushing my teeth. I don't need to have a 15-minute shower where 3 or 4 of those minutes is just the water running while I get it to the perfect temperature. So those little things.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's quite a moment. Like the awareness is high. So you strike while the iron's hot here to say,
Exactly.
hey, look, we waste a lot of water. We can do this better. You're an engineering prof. You teach people who are coming up in your industry, and you talk to them. Like, what do you pick at in this whole water main example as kind of important learnings for people in your industry?
Yeah, that's a great one. And, we're talking about it right now with our civil engineering design students, actually this week is a conversation on, like, we do all this great engineering work, but we do a really good job at hiding it. So not that many people understand the complexity. I think most people take for granted how hard it is actually to get clean, safe drinking water to your tap. So what we're trying to teach engineers is to communicate about the work that we're doing, to get people to understand it, because when they understand it, they care a bit more about it. And that's what's really going to help us, change the game here. So we're trying to teach people, it's important the work that you're doing, because what we do as engineers is to protect public health. But if people don't appreciate it, then they're going to take it for granted. So really finding ways to emphasize the importance that infrastructure plays in our everyday life.